Keep on designing game devs. Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 36 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with today's most experienced game developers 7 days a week. We will learn about their backgrounds, the obstacles they have to overcome, and the tools they used to be effective. And today's featured guest is Akitomo Morita, aka Aki. So Aki, it is go time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Aki is a senior software engineer at Hypnos Entertainment, and he has been in the game industry for 17 years. So we have a big veteran here, guys, and so I'm really happy that he decided to be on the show. He worked on games such as Battlefield, Dead Space, and FIFA. So go ahead, Aki, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Well, my older brother was into computers and video games. This is back in the 80s. And he actually started working for Origin Systems back in 1987, and he worked on Ultima 5. And there's actually a character named after him in the game called Toshi, and that's my older brother. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, that got me interested in the video games, but I never really thought that I could make a living out of it or do it as a job, because I always thought it was, back then, especially back in the 80s and early 90s, it was a really small industry. It was really hard to get into. You had to be super top notch to get into it. And I ended up, going to A&M. I started out in aerospace engineering, but, I kind of decided that the aerospace industry wasn't doing very good. So I changed over to computer engineering because I really wanted to learn how computers work from the inside. And that really, really did help me later on when I got into video games. I actually ended up working on NASA projects for my first 6 years before I got into the video games industry. And my first job was at 3DO in California, which no longer exists. But the funny thing about it, I was looking to get into the games industry after I was in NASA for 6 years. I was looking to change jobs. And, I sent a couple of resumes out, and, one of the guys called back and he says, he saw that I worked at NASA, and he said, "You do know what we do here, right?" I was like, "Yes, I know exactly what y'all do there." So that was kind of cool. It's very interesting because going from NASA work to going to video games is I tell everybody it's like night and day, because when you work on NASA projects, and I find a bug in the code, and it could be change this number from something to something else, or it could be change this plus sign to a minus sign. It could be something trivial like that. Yet, because of, and we were working on telemetry from the space shuttle and the space station. So, people were making decisions based on the data that was going through the code that I was working on. So, we can't have any mistakes in there. Occasionally there are some mistakes, some minor stuff. And to get that fixed, I would fill out a problem report. It would get put into the system. It would go to NASA. They would allocate money for it. It would come back to us saying we could work on it. Have to do, preliminary design, detailed design, code inspections, unit tests, unit integration tests, and then it would go to NASA and they would do their own testing before. It could be, 6 months from the time I found a problem to the time it's actually fixed on the floor and they're using the fix. Whereas, video games industry, I find a problem right now. I might have to fill out a bug report, but it'll immediately get assigned back to me. I can fix it. I can, check in the code. And the fix is done within a matter of hours. So that's why it's like night and day between working on NASA stuff and working on video games. Also, it's not like, people's lives depend on the code that I'm working on. So it's a lot more fun, a lot less pressure.
Yeah, way less pressure. Wow.
Yeah, that's how I got into the video games industry. I worked at 3DO for a couple of years, and I worked at TimeGate here in Sugar Land for a couple of years, and now I work for Hypnos Entertainment, and I've worked for them since 2005, and I'm lucky because I get to work from home full time, and work with developers all over the world. I'm working with guys in Florida right now, but I've worked with guys in Sweden. I've worked with guys in the UK, and they have testers in Hungary. They have testers in Shanghai and Australia. Literally all over the world. So it's pretty neat.
If people had to teach themselves your expertise, what would you suggest they use?
I started out, like I said, my older brother was in video games, and we had computers around the house growing up, and I had an Apple II, and I learned how to program in BASIC, and then I figured out how to do assembly language and machine language, and the Apple II is a very simple machine, and it was it's very easy to learn. And that experience for me, because later on when I got into doing graphics programming and shaders and such, in my experience in computer engineering, knowing how the computer worked and also knowing how assembly language works and such, that really helped me with shader programming and graphics programming and such. But it's really, I think it's really important to know, not just know how the computer works at a high level, not just know C++ or Java or these high level languages. I think it's important to know how the computer works on the inside. Nowadays, these processors are very complex, multi-threaded and hyper-threading and multiple processors, and there's a lot of it's very complex, and there's prefetching and branch prediction and such, and you don't need to know all those details, but it helps to be aware of that stuff works somewhat, so that you get a better understanding of how the computer works. And then I know it's hard to imagine, how does this huge game get developed from all these simple instructions? But that's kind of, you have to. When I was at NASA, it helped to. There were people there who knew stuff at the high level, and people who knew stuff, at their own little sandbox, so to speak. But there were very few people who knew how all the pieces fit together. And I think that's important to know, is how do all the pieces of a game, how do all the pieces of the computer, how do they all work together to, make games happen?
And yeah, I'm glad you led to that, because so you're working with so many different other talents. So what do y'all do to maximize y'all team effectiveness, to ensure like everyone's up to date, everyone is putting in all the right pieces? How do you make sure the whole team is like on the right path?
Well, usually the teams are broken up into different groups. You'll have graphics group, you have a gameplay group, you have the systems group, you have like a UI group, and there's a lot of planning that's done ahead of time, so that you know what kinds of things you're going to be working on, what the game needs, what tasks are still left to be done, and what tasks are finished. And usually there's also a bug reporting system where problems are found, they get stuck in the bug reporting system, and then those get assigned to the teams, and then teams will assign them to people, individuals, and that's all that stuff gets tracked that way. But yeah, it's as far as how do you determine who's working on what? That's a higher level project management type problem. Yeah.
So what part specifically do you work on the game?
Well, I've worked on all different kinds of parts. Right now, on this particular game that I'm working on right now, I'm doing a lot of memory optimizations. The game has a lot of tools built in to give memory statistics, and I have some tools to run over that to help find memory leaks or try to identify memory leaks. And then we have to go back into the code and try to figure out why it's leaking that memory, or if it's a legitimate leak. Sometimes it's just holding onto the memory for a really long time. But I've done performance optimizations in the past where, for example, we worked on one game on the PS3, and when we got the game, it was running one frame every 10 seconds. So 0.1 frames per second, and our job, and I was part of a small team to get that up to regular speed, so to speak, and we got that up to 25-30 frames a second in 3 months. That was a very short time to do that job. But yeah, we were doing a lot of optimizations. And it was PS3 and Xbox 360, and they were mainly working on the Xbox 360 version, and we got brought in to get the PS3 version up to speed, literally.
Well, you got so much experience. Memory optimization, you say?
Yeah, memory optimization, performance optimizations. I used to do a lot of graphics work before that. When I worked at Timegate, they didn't actually have a position open, but they made a spot for me because I had previously interviewed for the senior graphics engineer position. And I worked on gameplay bugs, I worked on audio bugs, I worked on AI bugs.
Bro, you're like all around. You can probably do everything.
I don't feel like I'm the best engineer or an expert in any particular one field, regarding video games, but I feel like I've got enough experience where I could step in and make a contribution in any part of the game that they ask me to. And that's actually part of our job at Hypnos is, we get brought in to help these game teams finish their games or get their games up to snuff. And so, that's, I know you're going to ask me about one of the difficulties that I've had. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I get, it's like every 6 months to a year, I'm on a different project with a different team that I've never worked with before usually, and I have to get in there and I have to learn the code and learn how they work and figure out, how the game works that they're trying to build, and be able to, make a contribution really quick. That's been my job. It's like they call it a firefighter, brought in to put out fires. So.
Oh, so they actually call you that when you go in?
Yes, I've heard that term when I worked on NASA projects, that they'd have, when a project is having a problem, they'll bring people in to try to fix those problems, and those people kind of get nicknamed firefighters.
What do you consider like a really bad moment that you had to overcome?
I don't know if I can identify one bad moment. I mean, the game that ran at 0.1 frames per second, that was very big problem. And but it was kind of once we figured out what was going on, it was fairly easy to figure out that the Xbox 360 has 3 CPUs, it has 3 cores, and multi-threaded or hyper-threaded. So there's actually 6 threads that you can run on there. The PS3 has one main PPU, the main CPU is multi-threaded, but then they have all these little SPUs, which are special person. They're I forget what the SPU stands for, but they're highly specialized, and it's hard to. It's a little bit more work to get code to run on those, and they weren't taking advantage of those at all. So it was a matter of identifying what we could move over there and try to get to run up to speed. But that was, like I said, we had to do a lot of work on that one.
Yeah, within 3 months, I bet. Yeah.
In 3 months, that was a lot of work.
Is there like a lot of pressure from the higher up to like, do they stand behind your back and just like hound at you to get it done?
No, that's kind of the pressure that we put on ourselves. We know that's our job. That's what we're expected to do. That's what we get paid to do. That's our job. So
yeah, okay, that's awesome.
That's my personal experience. I wouldn't expect everybody in the games industry to be under that pressure.
Yeah. So what would be like the best investment you've made? Like it could be investment of money, time, or energy. And how did you decide to make that investment?
Well, like I said, I learned assembly language way back when. I was actually in middle school, I think, when I started looking at it.
Oh wow!
And that has helped a lot. And like I said, when I went to A&M, and I could have been just a computer science major, but instead I took computer engineering so I could learn how the computers work on the inside, and that has really helped too. I think those two have really helped me in the games industry, and made me a better programmer in general too.
So what currently today, what do you suggest newcomers trying to use or try to learn?
A game programmer, if you're going to do big games and work on big games, they should know C. They should know a lot of C. They should know assembly language, and you should know C++, but you don't need to know like all of C++. But you should be familiar with inheritance and polymorphism and
yeah. And there's so much information out there, free tutorials online and classes. So there's no stopping a person from learning. They just got to go ahead and get started.
Right. And there's also like you can get the engine, the engine for the code for the Quake, and you can, it's out there, open source or free. It's freely available, and you can download it and you could poke around in it. You could, try to make changes to it and build it and see what happens. And that, that's kind of how, when I get thrown into a new team, a new project, that's kind of how I figure out how it works. You just have to start looking at the code and poking around and seeing how it fits together.
And that's true. And Quake is a good idea too, because it's already made for you. And so if you poke around and change a bit stuff, it changes stuff in the game as well. So you can see your changes. And I told people that like once you see your game in motion, it just feels really, really good. At its core, what are your key principles for better game development?
Yeah, crunch time is a big issue in the games industry, and I think a lot of that is due to a lack of planning, especially. Back 20 years ago, there were a lot of games, smaller games were being built, and they weren't that familiar with the kind of the project management aspect of making games. And I think nowadays it should be a very well studied, well understood process. And I think if you're making a game, especially if you're going to involve more than just yourself, I think it's important to go research and learn about how to do proper project management, and I don't know if like product life cycle is important, but look into that kind of things, how other industries have managed software projects.
Yeah, I heard about a game design document. I heard that that's an extremely important document to have before you start, because it basically shows you all the process of the whole game design.
Right.
So that's
right.
the whole point of the document, and it just gives everybody an outlook of what to expect and what to do.
Right. I'm usually down in the trenches, so I don't get to see all that stuff happening. But yeah, all that stuff is happening on all these games that I'm working on.
Awesome. So, all right, yes. What would be like the one thing you are most excited about today in the game industry that's coming up?
Yeah, I think VR is a very interesting thing. It's the VR is still in its infancy. Not a lot of people have VR headsets and such, but I think that's going to be really interesting to see how what kind of games come out on VR. That's what I'm excited to see in the next few years.
Yeah, it's a surreal feeling when you are in VR. It feels crazy. And do you think you're going to be creating a game for it in the future? I bet. I
don't know. I'm at that phase in my career, in my life, where I'm happy to be working on other people's projects, not necessarily my pet projects. I still have a passion for games, but I've never really had a passion for making my own game or, following my own dream. I'm just been really fortunate and really happy to work on other people's games. And, if they want me to work on a VR game, sure, I'll definitely work on a VR game.
Yeah, definitely. We check it out if you get to. All right. So now it is crunch time, and this is where I'm going to ask you like quick questions in very fast pace. So Aki, are you ready to end this with a bang?
Sure.
Awesome. So what was holding you back from becoming a game developer?
I didn't think I was good enough, but obviously they thought I was, so.
Yeah, and it worked out, right? 17 years?
Yeah, it worked out. Exactly.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Somebody I worked with, one of my programming leads, said, if you put something in a game that's really interesting and really cool, but nobody sees it, it's not worth putting in the game. Don't waste your time on it.
Yeah, that's actually good, because you're wasting time if you do that.
I saw a piece of code once. I was working on a game. They had something like 3,000 or 4,000 lines of code to determine the position of the moon in the sky at night based on longitude, latitude, day, month, year, hour, minute, second. Nobody's going to notice that the moon is in the right place or in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's actually unfortunate too. But okay, what's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Well, I work from home. I have to have a lot of self-discipline. I'm always up. I'm always, always shower, eat breakfast, get dressed. I'm not. I think it's for me, it's self-discipline. Like
you don't have to go out to events or anything, or when they have to go. Oh wow, that's amazing right there. That flexibility is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Share internet resource.
I use, I Google a lot of problems, and then it often sends me over to Stack Overflow. And so I found the Stack Overflow to be a really good programming resource. It's a forum for people to ask their programming questions.
In the past 6 months, what purchases under $100 had a positive impact on your life in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I think if I wanted to learn, how video games work, I would definitely download Unity or Unreal and start poking around with one of those. And as far as spending money, you might. I know they have. They both have stores that you can buy assets from. Asset stores and libraries and such. But I'm not familiar with which ones specifically to buy. I know a lot of people here in Houston, independent game developers that are using Unity, and that they'll buy assets. So.
Okay. All right. Now, this next question is a doozy. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of, and you have a laptop. What would you do in the next few days on the path to become a great game developer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously I would, if I had that much time and I didn't have, if I wanted to be a game developer again, I would start making my own games. I would, yeah.
Take us from that day one to the next few days. What would you do?
I see a lot of people start projects and never finish them. I think it's more important to finish a project than it is to have a unique project at first, just to get that experience under your belt. It also shows, people who are looking for programmers or artists or designers that you can finish something from, do something from start to finish. So I would, I know there are these games jams that are going on around. Try to build a game, small game. My first game that I wrote was an Othello game. It's a simple board game, or I would pick something and I would just build a game from scratch and build it as complete as I could. And I don't think it would take me, but I think I could get something showable within a week and probably finish within a month. I would hope.
and that's you hit on a point. That's so important that not just because you started as well, but you at least complete it and don't stop halfway. Because people sometimes get demotivated or they just stop all of a sudden. And in order to get that motivation to keep making more games, you want to complete that project you had and don't just stop halfway. Right.
And I think if I kept doing that over and over and over again, and 6 months you could crank out 6 games, and I think that's a pretty good portfolio.
Oh yeah, that'd be a great portfolio. And with any games like booming now, and it'd be more easier to put your game on like Steam or just any like on the Switch or something. So there's the opportunity is growing.
Yeah, there's plenty of places to push your game.
And not only that, like you could team up with other people online now, or find people online you could team up with, and just make something happen.
Exactly.
You don't have to do it alone if you don't want to.
Right.
So
right. Yeah, because I'm a terrible artist, so I would need art help.
Yeah, like me right now, I actually outsource my programming and my art because I suck at both. But I'm directing the game and putting my game design on it. So, and that's the reason why I got back into the game industry, because I tried programming and art, and I was just absolutely terrible at it. And so that's when I thought I gave up on gaming, but then I heard about outsourcing and stuff. So I just outsourced all that stuff. And so far, the game is almost complete. So the point is nothing should stop you from trying to make a game. Like if you want to make a game, just go ahead and get started and complete it. Just complete it. All right. Yeah. And appreciate it. So give us a parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you.
I haven't, I get enough of working on games in my job. I'm fortunate. I realize that. But I'll do other stuff to take my mind off of games, and I think giving your mind a chance to relax.
Yeah, I think taking a break is a great idea. You feel refreshed when you get back to it. So, Aki, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We look forward to your work. Until then, we catch you next time. Thank you, Game Devs, for listening, and remember that knowledge is only potential power. Execution is the game. I am so excited to announce our first sponsored giveaway with Game Dev Underground, where a winner can get a free 1-hour consultation with the founder, Tim Ruswick. So if you have any questions on building and launching your game, get on this giveaway ASAP. This is a $1,000 value, and it can be yours. All you have to do is go to the show notes page at GameDevLoadout.com and sign up for my email list. That's it. So until then, keep on making great games, and I will catch you on the next episode. Bye.